speaking of rolling, Hisuian Electrode V is doing a lot of that, paired with its new favorite friend, Klawf and Brute Bonnet.
There we go. All right, I know a fan favorite here, the Hisuian Electrode V Klawf deck, where you inflict special conditions on your own Pokemon to do extra damage. Going up against the Roaring Moon EX, one of the newer decks from the Paradox Rift expansion that we've seen earlier today. Both these players going to be trying to battle it out to see who makes it into day number 2 here in Portland. Roaring Moon, of course, does have a weakness to Grass type, which that is the type of Hisuian Electrode V. So let's see what happens in this one.
This will be an interesting coin flip. I think both these decks actually would really like to go second to get that turn 1 attack off. Usually one player is okay going second or the other one wants to disrupt by going second, but both players are sort of gearing to go second. Now, Bennie is a first-time stream appearancer, so we'll be playing on stream for the first time. Rocking out this Roaring Moon EX deck. This is pretty similar to what we saw round 4. Lots of these decks using high counts of Energy Switch paired with Galarian Moltres V as a way to continue to get these Pokemon powered up, as James Musser as well is a very known Crab Rave enjoyer. And look, what year is this, Kyle? I feel like Crab Rave, am I getting old?
You'll get used to it someday, don't worry.
That makes me feel comforted. Thanks,
but yeah, Klawf, of course, a fan favorite. Just a fun Pokemon. And we have seen this deck on streams before. We'll get into the strategy a bit more as we go along. One of the more unique strategies we see in the Pokemon TCG. Normally, you're not trying to put special conditions on your own Pokemon because they have negative effects, but this is an exception.
See the prize cards for both players.
Squawkabilly, that's a big one.
Yeah, that's big. Only playing the 1 copy of Squawkabilly. So that's in the prize cards, unavailable for Bennie in this game. James does have some of those spicy seasoned curry in the prize cards. There is one of those, but I think we're going to have a good game here, Kyle, between both these competitors.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm being honest, this is not a matchup I am super familiar with. But on paper, if I look at this, you know, Roaring Moon does tend to struggle a lot with the single prize decks. Pairing that with Electrode can knock out Roaring Moon, hit for weakness. Seems like an uphill battle for the Roaring Moon deck, but I will say there are some interesting tech cards in this version of Bennie's deck. We'll see if they come into play as we go along.
So will be Bennie starting things off. And look at that huge find in the opening hand. Hisuian Heavy Ball to get the 1 of Squawkabilly out of the prize cards. And with what was going on in this hand for Bennie, that is an excellent find to see in these 7 cards.
Yeah, sometimes it's nice to have a card prized. This is one of those rare cases. Yeah, Hisuian Heavy Ball hits, finds Squawkabilly EX, and now we'll see just how many cards Bennie plays on this turn.
So no attack happening, no supporter either, but it's plenty fine when your deck is built to just be aggressive regardless of needing to use something like Professor Sawdust. So we'll see the Pokestop put into play. And Iron Hands EX coming onto the bench.
Right.
You see James sort of lift his eyebrows up a little bit, maybe not expecting that, even putting the lightning energy on it, trying to threaten potentially an amp you very much on the second turn of the game.
Yep. And we're going to see the Pokestop first or the Squawk and Seize. Yep, going to go for that first. I like that decision. Draw your cards, then try to fill your hand up even further with the Pokestop. And looks like it will be a pretty strong start from Bennie, but let's be honest, Roaring Moon, weakness to grass. Iron Hands, weakness to fighting. I don't know. Amp You Very Much does take a 2-prize knockout on a Klawf, but it can get knocked out in return.
That is the question here. If you're Bennie, how do you want to play this hand out? Not really much going on. You've got only 1 energy card in the discard pile. You do have that 4 Seal Stone. Do still have access to Pokestop. The wheel has not been spun yet, but it's actually going to be the Battle Pass grabbing nothing, and that is a telltale sign your opponent's off to a great start on turn 1.
Yeah, one thing I'll be interested to see is whether Bennie goes for Galarian Moltres V in this matchup. There's a Pokemon that can power itself up, but no, it is also a weakness to grass types, I believe.
That's true.
So I don't think we're going to see very many small hits in this matchup. I think lots of one-hit knockouts will be exchanged, which should make for a fun match.
Still plenty left to go. We even see that Radiant Greninja can still use concealed cards, discard that water energy, draw a few more. Pair of Nest Ball, though. Could honestly just see this entire hand just get played down. Play the Ultra Ball, get rid of these Nest Ball. You've got your 5 Pokemon in play that you want on the bench. And you restart. Still, Bennie got plenty of gas in the tank for this final turn. Can end it off with a restart, but it is going to be that big question for James. It feels like it's so weird in this format that turn 1 could just be the crucial turn here for James. If James can find the turn 1 knockout onto this Roaring Moon, you're essentially beating Roaring Moon in its own game. This deck is built to just push its aggression on other decks, and when you take the first prize cards, lots of times Roaring Moon just can't do anything about it because that's their whole game plan.
Keep in mind, this is Bennie's first turn and is going first, and he's still going.
3 more cards here, too. Wow.
This is feeling like a Mew VMAX deck. We see the restart. Did play the Dark Patch just to get an extra card off of the restart. Could have just used Dire Flame Wings, but we just wanted to draw the extra card. And yeah, like you were saying, could see a 2-prize knockout on that Roaring Moon EX. So Bennie is just going to switch into the Radiant Greninja and say, okay, if you take a knockout, hopefully it's just 1 prize card.
The most interesting thing is if Escape Rope is played, there's a way to knock out any Pokemon on the bench here for Bennie, even though it's all 2 prize cards. So
it's the Electrode.
See what James can put together. See an Electrode coming down. We'll see actually the double turbo energy on Klawf. I mean, that makes sense. It's got the 2 energy attack. Assuming Electrode does have that bonus of having a super strong attack when its special conditions are applied on it and attacks for 0 energy. That's sort of the mechanic of these Hisuian Pokemon. So for James here, it just comes down to how do you want to navigate this turn out? There's an Escape Rope in hand, has some of those spicy Seasoned Curry, Pokestop. So lots of choices. James got to identify first which Pokemon does he want to attack.
Yep, there's 2 main ways to enable this deck strategy. First one is the Spicy Seasoned Curry, an item card that heals damage from your active Pokemon, but also leaves it burned. So that's one way you get a special condition on your active Pokemon. The other one is the Brute Bonnet, which has an ability if it has the Ancient Booster Energy Capsule attached to it. It makes both active Pokemon poisoned. So again, you're trying to put special conditions on your own Pokemon because Klawf's Unhinged Scissors and then Hisuian Electrode V's Tantrum Blast do additional damage. They work a little bit differently. Klawf just cares about any special condition. The Hisuian Electrode V actually cares about how many special conditions it is affected by. So sometimes, you know, you combine the Spicy Seasoned Curry to make it burned, and then the Brute Bonnet to make it poisoned, and then that's 200 damage for 0 energy.
So Ultra Ball getting played, Squawkabilly EX hitting the battlefield. Squawk and Seize can be used. I think James also has access to the town store, so that can find the Forest Sealstone, and that's a great thing about having a V Pokemon as your main attacker is you have that added consistency. We're actually just going to see the Spicy Seasoned Curry used on this active, so lining up a potential knockout guaranteed onto the Radiant Greninja. And Squawk and Seize, discarding no cards and a great find Battle VIP pass. James can start to develop his board, get things like Brute Bonnet into play, Bidoof to have Industrious Incisors available later. Though technically that's not a card maybe that's as important in terms of responding from disruption like it usually does because I mean, Bennie's Roaring Moon deck doesn't play any copies of something like Iono.
Yeah, it's still nice to be able to draw extra cards, so it doesn't hurt to have that down. Yeah, you did mention, you know, there was an Escape Rope in James's opening hand. Could have played it. The awkward thing is that Iron Hands, it would have required, you know, getting Klawf back into the active spot to hit for that fighting weakness. So it would not have, you know, guaranteed a knockout here. So James deciding it's okay to just take 1 prize on this Radiant Greninja, and we'll go from here.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, if you play the Escape Rope with Town Store, you can technically Forest Sealstone for whatever card you want. So if Iron Hand comes up, you just grab, switch card, play the switch card down, play the curry. So I
true.
do wonder here, though, and maybe it was just the development of, do I want to develop my board more? Do I want to go after these 2 prizes? But maybe there was just a way for James to get ahead. And this is sort of what we talked about in round 4. This 1 prize knockout on Greninja, what is it really going to do? But wow, has the boss's orders in hand.
Yeah, there still wasn't a supporter played yet.
That's true. It feels like so much has already happened this turn, but no boss came after. And James making a smart play, identifying that, yes, amp you very much is very scary. Don't want to deal with that, as we will just see Klawf take the knockout, unhinged scissors, weakness. And Benny's like, wait, what does this do?
And
probably his first Klawf of the day, I'm sure of that.
Klawf saying, no, amp you very much. I'll take the 2 prize cards.
Klawf's last stand. It's happening right now.
Yeah, and if you're Bennie, how do you respond to that? You don't really have a good answer, I don't think. All you can do is power up one of your Pokemon V and hope for the best.
And the best part about this for James as well is didn't even have to use the V-Star power. Has Root Bonnet in play.
Sure, yeah.
Still has access to that consistency option. And man, James has done exactly what he wants to. Taking the first prize cards, apply pressure, and with all of these Pokemon being weak to either grass or fighting, it feels like even if you're able to take knockouts and keep pace with what James is pushing in, the amount of work that James needs to do to get these knockouts is almost minimal at this point. The weakness is not extremely relevant because of the way the math works out, but I mean, it's 2 special conditions. It's a Spicy Seasoned Curry, and it's an Ancient Booster Energy Capsule, and that's a knockout on any Pokemon in Benny's deck.
Yep. And then Bennie, went to the town store, but they were all sold out of Pokemon tools. So I had to fail that one. Only one in his deck is the Forest Sealstone. Spins the Pokestop instead. Finds a Nest Ball. Just not great.
Yeah, this hand is just not that good now. There is the bailout, of course, the get-out-of-jail-free card almost on that Galarian Moltres V. Star Alchemy has not yet been used.
Yep.
But you really just want to save that, of course, for as long as possible, because the earlier you use it, the less options you're going to have later down the line.
Yeah, now there is one Thornton in this deck, a way to kind of surprise, get an Iron Hands EX out. Kind of the idea is you use Galarian Moltres V to Dire Flame Wings, accumulate energy, and then out of nowhere you can play Thornton and swap it with the Iron Hands EX, and it's instantly charged up. I don't know if we'll see that come into play here. Seems a little difficult to pull off, but that is something to keep in mind in the future.
It does have Energy Switch. I probably would like to just see that used off of the Galarian Moltres. Usually, it's the same situation where you need 2 special conditions. I mean, Burn would get the knockout with just 1 even. And because of doing 30 damage to yourself because of Aura Burn, you're in an awkward situation. And Bennie, I think, is just considering what's next at this point.
Yep.
It will be the V-Star power. Not throwing the towel just yet. It will actually just be the Earthen Vessel grab. So maybe not enough dark energy in the discard pile to use something like that Professor Sada.
Yeah, I mean, this is just a rough situation. I feel like Bennie could have picked whatever attacker to go with here, and it still wouldn't have been a very favorable situation. Yep, just says, okay, I'm done here.
Klawf is all it takes. Klawf taking down the world here, Kyle.
Yeah, you don't see that very often. You go, okay, I'm going to use Star Alchemy to search for any card, grab a card, and then just immediately concede. All right, so that will be game 1 to Klawf and Hisuian Electrode V. This does look like a very favorable matchup, but this deck is known for being a little bit inconsistent. It can struggle to set up its combos sometimes, so even in good matchups, you never feel confident about what's coming next.
So an excellent start there for James, putting on display the power of Klawf. What Klawf can do with just its 2 little scissor hands.
It only took 1 attack, and then the opponent just conceded.
You have to respect Klawf's power at that point.
Yeah.
You just gotta respect real, recognize real, right?
You could say that, yeah.
So going into the second game, if you're Bennie, chose to go first in that position. Is that the adaptation you need to sort of stick with what happened in game 1? It just felt like Bennie didn't necessarily have a bad turn. I would say it was above par turn. It was a pretty solid turn, but no matter what he did, it was just 1 knockout from James, and that took it. what else can you really do in game 2 to adapt to Bennie?
I mean, just hope that James draws poorly, I think.
That's
was
never good.
That was a great start from James, right? It was a turn 1 boss's orders, knock out the Iron Hands. That was pretty strong. I don't think that happens on average. So you just got to hope for a couple turns where James isn't able to pull off an attack. Yeah, part of the issue is that, you know, that weakness to grass really makes it easier for Hisuian Electrode V to get big knockouts here. But yeah, I don't know. It's tough. You really just got to power up your attackers. Cross your fingers that, you know, your opponent doesn't do everything they need to do. Because yeah, a severe weakness advantage in this matchup.
Well, we'll see how things play out. I think Bennie said that was the 8th different deck that was played against. And we talk about variants in the Pokemon TCG. Usually it's never that true of hitting 8 different decks. I mean, you've got tens of different decks, like usually 30 different decks if you were to count every single archetype in a room, maybe somewhere around that, and hit a different one every time. It's pretty solid.
Yeah, James said, this is the first Roaring Moon I played against today, and Bennie said, this is the first Klawf I played against today.
Maybe one's a little bit more of an achievement than the other.
All right, do see a mulligan, no basic Pokemon in the opening hand, so Bennie has to shuffle in, draw a new hand of 7 cards, and then James will be able to start the game with, it's actually the second mulligan, so 2 additional cards. You know, when you're staring down a bad matchup like this, and you don't have any hand disruption in your deck, it's a bad feeling. Let's just say that.
It's not great at all. It's bonus cards for James to work with, and like you said, if your win condition is, I hope my opponent doesn't draw anything, every extra card you give them is one more card that they have to get out of that. We do see 2 of those Spicy Season Curry in the prizes, and the Grant as well, which can boost some damage. Listen, Grant might be getting itself its first day 2 here, potentially. I'm sure somebody's maybe piloted Grant to a day 2 so far, but here we go. Game number 2, kicking things off. And
that's a nice one.
Yeah, you know what? Can never complain about Battle VIP Pass on turn 1. And Bennie will get set up, find these Pokemon out. We didn't see anything like Squawk ability in the prizes, so can pitch the hand away. And I think that might be what we're going to be doing here is not much else going on. Now, there are a few resources really don't like to see go. Of course, those Dark Patch, Energy Switch, especially if Bennie wants to rely on something like the Iron Hands again to get powered up. You're going to need those Energy Switch later on to manipulate the energy around your board after you accelerate them into play via the different methods that you have.
Yeah, I think we might see Bennie go for Radiant Greninja, try to concealed cards into a way to get a Darkness-type Pokemon to use that Dark Patch. It hurts to throw away that many resources. But we'll see how it works out. Definitely going to grab Squawkabilly EX. It's interesting, when Squawkabilly EX first came out, you know, obviously it's a very strong ability. Reminds you of the Dedenne GX, the Dedenne change, but you can only use it on your first turn. It took a while for this card to see play. You know, it is a low HP Pokemon EX, gives up 2 prize cards. It's a target on the bench, but as we've seen more of these kind of turbo style of decks, there's just so much value in making sure that your first turn is smooth. And so we're seeing it pop up a lot more.
Choosing to get Iron Hands instead.
Okay, yeah.
Putting the Iron Hands on the bench, getting rid of all these energy cards, and we'll see 6 fresh new cards, Squawk and Seize. What else can Bennie put together this turn? Wow, 2 more Battle VIP Pass. It's deja vu of game 1, but listen, this is not a deja vu. This is a nightmare deja vu if it's going to go the same way if James is able to get off to a super strong start. Now, the question comes, what are your choices off of this? I don't even know if you need to play both of these Battle Pass. You've got Earthen Vessel in your hand. I think the big thing here, and maybe one of the weaknesses of Bennie not playing something like the Morpeko in this deck, is you're unable to put 2 of those 1 prize Pokemon into play on the first turn, preventing against an aggressive start from James into an escape rope, taking 2 prize cards, even if you promote Radiant Greninja like Bennie did in game number 1.
Okay, we see 2 fails on the Battle VIP passes. Just trying to thin out the hand for perhaps a restart from Mew EX. It's interesting, though, because I assume you're going to use concealed cards as well. So if you're going to do that, your hand's going to go back up in size. So maybe I don't know, there's some merit to kind of waiting to play those battle VIP passes. Use the concealed cards first, see what you draw, go from there.
I think the last 2 cards are 2 Pokemon in play, so you technically go -1 in hand by playing Earthen Vessel to discard an Earthen Vessel and then attaching one of the energy cards. So I think it ends up working out this way to be okay.
Just gonna see restart for 2 and then draw back up with the Radiant Greninja after that. Makes sense.
No Dire Flame Wings used yet. Does have Trekking Shoes and an Energy Search. And we'll keep Pokestop as well. Now deciding to concealed cards away this Darkness Energy. I mean, getting these energies in the discard pile is fine. You just don't want to see those cards. Not really a trade that you want, getting rid of those resources. We are still just going to see more firing away.
No, the Thornton.
Let's get rid of the Thornton, though, and cat's out of the bag now. James will have knowledge of that card. It wasn't revealed in Game 1. Can maybe navigate a little bit differently, understanding that that card is an option. And I'm sure the gears are turning in his head, thinking, okay, well, if this does go to a Game 3, is there something I need to do in that 3rd game to maybe play around that card a little bit differently?
This is an awkward hand for Bennie. 2 Nest Balls, which are unplayable, and an Energy Switch. So next turn might be a little rough. May not be able to really do much of anything, but we'll see what happens here. Same decision as last game, going to decide to put up the Radiant Greninja and just pass the turn. Mew EX is a little difficult to knock out. It would require, you know, the full 2 special conditions on the Hisuian Electrode V to get a knockout. And there we do see Pokestop being used right away and does find the Battle VIP pass for James. So huge thing, or huge way to kick things off. We'll see if turn 1 once again ends in a 2-prize knockout for James.
Yeah, I was thinking with like the resistance on Klawf plus burn, if that's enough, but it's 170. Nah, you're 20 damage short, so you're just off of this point. So James has a lot of cards to work with. Of course, did draw those mulligans, so working with 2 extra cards in this situation. I believe already has the Brute Bonnet. We didn't even see that come down in Game 1, but that's the consistent way that James applies these special conditions. Uses the Brute Bonnet with the Ancient Booster Energy Capsule, and that allows you to poison your opponent's Pokemon every turn, giving you consistent access to special conditions on your Klawf and Hisuian Electrode.
Yeah, and see lots of cards in hand. Remember, there were 2 mulligans in this game. So James, you gotta think, will have plenty of options. Hasn't even used the Squawkabilly EX yet. We see the Escape Rope in hand. It might present already a difficult decision for Bennie on which Pokemon to promote. And we'll see just how devastating James's first turn can be. If it's anything like Game 1, where he's able to get a 2-prize knockout, well, you're not going to be feeling good if you're Bennie.
And this is smart from James as well, to just not play any more cards before playing this Escape Rope, because you want to give Bennie as little information as possible off of this. And I don't know if I like bringing the Moltres up. That means Spicy Seasoned Curry would be enough to just take the knockout with the burn. It is going to be.
Well, you only burn your own Pokemon.
Oh, that's true. You do only burn your own Pokemon. My bad. Yeah.
Yeah, but
so that's still good. But yeah, we see Hisuian Electrode come up right away for a Seal Stone, and that's going to guarantee the knockout onto this active because of the booster energy and the roaring, or rather the Brute Bonnet in play already. James hasn't even played a supporter card yet. There hasn't been Squawk and Seize yet. This deck is just popping off here right now.
Yeah, it does mean if we see the Radiant Hisuian Sneasler, the poison damage will actually finish off the Roaring Moon EX.
True.
You only need the 1 special condition, plus it would be 3 damage counters from the poison.
Speaking of which, Battle VIP Pass, 2 of them being played, and that can grab, like you said, Hisuian Electrode V. Another one can come down, as well as, I think the question here is, yeah, do you value saving your V-Star power doing that and getting down the Hisuian Sneasler? I think the card's actually in hand right now. Or do you want to use your V-Star power and put Bidoof in play? And it seems like valuing the V-Star power is priority number 1 for James. Won't have access to Industrious Incisors next turn, but it's still very solid start. What more can you ask for, right? You're doing what Roaring Moon does, but better in this case. Taking a turn 1, going second, 2-prize knockout. And this is deja vu all over again.
And I think we saw James actually decide not to play the Town Store knowing that Bennie plays Forest Sealstone, just says, you know what, it's not worth giving you the option to go get the Forest Sealstone. So a heads-up play there as well. And there you do see Toxic Powder, so both active Pokemon are now poisoned. That activates Hisuian Electrode V's Tantrum Blast attack to do 100 damage, ×2 for weakness. Then the poison would be 1 damage counter, +2 from Radiant Hisuian Sneasler's ability. And that all adds up to a knockout. But there should be 10 damage on that Hisuian Electrode V.
That's true. Both these Pokemon should be poisoned. Not sure the math will necessarily matter too much. Yeah, you're not really... I guess it kind of does matter. If you this Electrode will go to 20, so that means that an Aura Burn from Moltres
yep.
can take the knockout. So, but again, using Moltres and damaging yourself is just... I mean, the Hisuian Sneasler in play doesn't make it matter anymore, but if that were to leave play somehow, you wouldn't need the extra 30 damage on from that, or an extra 20 damage, rather, from the poison. And we're just going to see restart, drawing up the hand. Still have access to Pokestop. Did find a copy of that Professor Sada's Vitality. So that will be played down. The question here, how do you want to spread these energies out? And what is your target attack for the turn? It feels like, yeah, even if you Calamity Slash, Calamity Storm, take this knockout, you're pretty much just staring down a return knockout again. And this is what we keep talking about with Roaring Moon. Yes, when it takes those first 2 prizes, it's so strong. But when it does struggle to get set up, when it struggles to initiate the prize trade, you kind of see the deck for what it really is sometimes.
Yeah, this is a rough one. We're going to see the Pokestop.
Ooh.
Yep, that Forest Sealstone, no longer an item card. It is a Pokemon tool, so cannot grab that up the Pokestop. But yeah, I mean, you can respond, get a knockout here, but then what? Your opponent is just going to knock you out right back. Then what do? You're just behind in this race, and it really doesn't take much from the other side. They already have the Brute Bonnet with the Ancient Booster Energy Capsule, so they can set up attacks every turn. How do you come back? There's no hand disruption.
Yeah.
I'm looking for a way out.
Show me something here. Show me something, Bennie. I need to see some sort of miracle way in this case. Now, this will be the knockout because of that poison damage. It does take 30 from the Aura Burn. And yeah, I mean, with the way this works now, you can even just take a knockout with this Klawf. It will deal 170 damage plus the poison damage, which is 30, is actually perfect math to knock out this Galarian Moltres V. And now you're staying in the prize race, and you're also putting up a 1 prize Pokemon. What more could you ask for than that?
Yep. I think the only good news for Bennie is that you actually don't mind Klawf being here. If you're able to power up Iron Hands EX and use Ampu very much to knock out this Klawf, you could potentially steal a win here. It seems very tough, but God, I'm just looking for some way out.
It's tough indeed.
It's tough with a Forest Sealstone in play. That makes it much more difficult, because now it's just a spicy seasoned curry. That Electrode can just knock anything out. Thanks to, the poison, the Radiant Hisuian Sneasler, you can get to 230. Oof, this is rough. Oh, well, that makes it worse too.
Yeah. That's even worse now. Not only are you taking the 2 prize knockout with a 1 prizer, but you're taking out the easiest response that Bennie has in this position.
Complete destruction from the Klawf deck. I mean, what else can you say? This is a
domination here. Klawf is putting on a streak at this point. He's taking down all these Pokemon, showing the power of the Crab. The Crab rave might begin soon, Kyle, if this win comes in for James. We'll have to get some dancing crabs up on the stage maybe and throw on a party. I need to hear some of that music. So actions on Bennie here. Your back is against the wall. You're staring down this, what seems to be the most powerful Pokemon in the format in Klawf. I mean, what can you do at this point? there's no way to remove these tool cards. Even if you have something like Boss's Orders, it feels like there's just no great Pokemon to pick off. I mean, you could try and target the consistent poison damage, but then your opponent could just bench another Brew Bonnet and attach another Ancient Booster Energy Capsule. And there's also Forest Seal Stone. You know your opponent held onto cards and discarded Research. That's not a great sign off that Ultra Ball. So, and as we've talked about, no hand disruption with Iono. So Benny's going to play to all the outs that are possible. This Roaring Moon, or rather, this Galarian Moltres is still powered up, of course. And speaking of Boss's Orders to maybe give a hope, that's gone too. Now there's a Pal Pad in the hand though for Benny, so maybe thin the hand down, restart, and say a prayer. That seems like all you can really do. And not only is it say a prayer to draw into the boss, but then you need to do another one to hope you don't lose the following turn as well.
Yeah, I was trying to think of any possible thing to happen here. The only way I could think of is if you Boss's Orders up the Brute Bonnet, which does have a pretty hefty retreat cost. The thing is, I don't think you can attack with Radiant Greninja enough to actually win that way. But yeah, if you could stick that active and continually Moonlight Shuriken your opponent's bench Pokemon, like that is one way out, but this deck is really designed to use Moonlight Shuriken once. With energy switches and things like that. I don't think you can do it twice.
It's going to be tough indeed. There are a bunch of energy switch in the hand. We did also see Thornton as the only supporter card brought back, so maybe valuing going for some sort of an Iron Hands play. Now there is... This is tough here. I got jump scared. I was talking about the game, but I look at the camera and they're just waving up to me.
Thanks for that one, James.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah, like Benny was trying to find a Lightning Energy or a Thornton off of this. You can Star Alchemy for one of those, and then you can Thornton into the Iron Hands and use Amp You very much. But missing both of those, I don't think it's possible this turn. And we are closing in, I think, on a victory for the Klawf deck.
It's just so tough. No Thornton in sight. No more abilities to be used. What can you do? We'll see Dark Patch Blade.
Yep.
But it all feels inevitable. I can't even play the Dark Patch. There's not even a Dark Energy in there.
Brutal.
Yeah, I don't know how much of a difference it would have made, but it's just
play the Professor Sada's Vitality, I guess.
And
okay,
here we go. Saying, listen, if you've got it, you've got it.
Let's hope there's no card in your deck that can beat me here.
And there it is, V-Star power on the Hisuian Electrode. There's Boss's Orders in the deck. It can bring up this benched Pokemon like the Galarian Moltres, and with the poison damage, will be exactly enough to take the knockout. James Musser advancing to 7-1 with a deck that not many people would expect. Unhinged even. Crab Rave here for James, 7-1 with Klawf.
The people love to see it, I'm sure. Klawf Hisuian Electrode V will make it into day 2 thanks to James. I mean, that, I don't know what else to say. That was just a complete dismantling of this Roaring Moon deck.